Let's consider market for aluminium. Oops. So I'll draw the demand and supply diagram for our analysis. So we have supply, demand, quantities of aluminium produced at different prices, and currently market is in equilibrium. The price is 11, let's say 10, 10 pounds, and this is 100 units. Easy to work with zeros. Now, the aluminium sold in the market is, let's say, produced by a large factory here in somewhere in small town. In comes all these raw materials, out comes tons of aluminium, and there is a nice village there with people living in that village, and like a small town as well, and people working at a factory also live in this area. But as usual, there is this harmful effect of aluminium production. So there's huge amount of sort of hazardous gases or sort of harmful emissions go into the atmosphere every year, and obviously in the calculation of private costs, the company does not take into account this pollution into the atmosphere. It doesn't consider the pollution, in other words, in supply decisions. So the supply decision is solely based on, say, private costs. And because this gas going into atmosphere causes some sort of healthcare issues in the village here, people will be sick, and they will be basically breathing polluted air, and that is a negative externality of this production process. Company doesn't consider that. It doesn't take into account in its calculation of the aluminium costs, private costs of aluminium production. As such, the market equilibrium here is actually private market equilibrium, is not socially optimal. It's not socially optimal equilibrium point, or the quantities produced is not socially optimal quantities, basically. And let's assume that the emissions roughly cost 3 pounds, say the 3 pounds a unit of aluminium produced. So we'll call this external cost. We'll call this EC, 3 pounds per aluminium unit produced. Then if we were to include that 3 pound in the supply decisions of the firm, we will see that we will be basically, for additional units production, we'll be adding the 3 pounds to the private costs, right? So we will basically be creating a new supply line. It's more like a shift of this existing private supply line to upwards or to left. So we will be kind of adding that 3 pound to the existing supply, and we'll be creating this new supply line, and let's call it PC plus EC here. So this supply curve reflects the social cost, or the cost to the society living nearby, and that's EC here, 3 pound additional per unit. So that's basically a shift upwards by 3 pounds here. So this is 3 pounds increase in the supply of additional units. So let me just get rid of that just in case we don't need that. But if we closely look at it, we will see that the new equilibrium point is actually different from the original one. This would be somewhere here, and let's say this is 80 units, right? So socially optimal units would be 80 units, not 100. So perhaps the firm is overproducing, and let's say the equilibrium price will then be 11.5-ish, something like this. It will not be 13. Equilibrium price will not be 13, because Demand is elastic, and not all of the £3 extra cost is basically paid by the customer. Yeah? Now, because the supply or social cost curve, so this is another name for the socially optimal curve. Yes, in some textbooks you will see that this is called marginal social cost curve. So the social cost curve is above the private cost curve. We have something called deadweight loss in the market. So the market is in fact not efficient from society's point of view. So if the firm continues producing 100 units, what happens is that if you trace this up to this social curve, you will see that the cost of producing 100 units is actually not 10 pounds, but it is 13 pounds, right? So as we added 30 pounds, so let's put it here as well, just to reflect that the social cost curve reflects that additional EC as well on top of the 10 pounds. So we are basically creating this deadweight loss here. So there is a welfare loss here because the social cost is greater than the private cost, or so marginal social cost is greater than the private cost at equilibrium. That's right now we are experiencing in the free market. Yeah, but the social equilibrium or socially optimal equilibrium point should really be different. In fact, it should be this point here where we are now producing less than before, and this point will be socially optimal because this would be kind of reducing the overproduction and also reducing the external cost as well, if the firm or market trades at this equilibrium point. In this case, government intervention is necessary because if free market is allowed to operate according to free market principles, the negative externality is imposed to the bystanders, but the firm will not usually cover the costs, right? So government may need to kind of force the supply curve to be on the socially or social cost curve. Yeah, so that way it is possible to kind of minimize external cost. Okay, so what can be done to do that? Well, government can use command and control methods, so CC methods. This could be that the government may tell the aluminium producers to cut the production to 80 units every year. But that may be costly for the government because they may need to do some sort of monitoring and may hire additional people to work with the company to make sure that they don't produce more, or may even include some sort of consultancy fees as well for the government. So that may be costly and may not even be properly implemented. The next option that the government has is then incentive option, where government might say, well, we'll impose tax for additional units of aluminium you produce, and they might, if and only if they know the cost of negative externality or the external cost, then they might say, okay, we're going to charge you exactly £3. Yes, let's think that they know it, but it will be very hard to calculate exact external cost. If they do so, then, well, government may then for additional unit of aluminium production charge that £3. And as you know, tax on production is a production cost basically. So supply curve shifts to left, and this way the government will be able to internalize this externality. Yeah. So now let's draw the new supply curve, and that would be, if tax is exactly £3, then it will overlap. Yeah, the new supply curve. Let me just use the line. It will overlap the social curve basically. So roughly there. This is the new supply curve now shifted to left after the tax is imposed, and the firm is now operating along this supply curve, and we call this a tax, not anymore EC curve, because tax is basically exactly the same as the external cost. And now this way now we are able to reduce the overproduction, and the market equilibrium now moves to quantity optimum. Let's call it optimum. Yeah. So optimum quantity is now 80 units with the price equilibrating at 11.50. So the price is is a little higher, which reflects basically the external cost to the society, and also quantities as well. Yeah, so because the quantities are lower, price is not as high as 13 pounds, so because there is a reduction as well, so some sort of compensation as well in terms of the quantities that are produced. So there's a reduction in quantities, that means less emission, and also plus some money is also going into government's pockets to, let's say, do environmental cleanup, maybe some sort of planting trees project or other activities can be carried out to improve the healthcare in the society. Yeah? Okay, so this is how the governments internalize a negative externality